It finally happened. After years of backlash, collapse in sales, and deafening silence from the top, Harley Davidson's CEO is stepping down. But this wasn't some graceful retirement. Jochen Zeitz promised a turnaround. Instead, he delivered record-high prices, gutted innovation, and pushed loyal riders to the brink. Now the company's trying to spin it as a planned transition. But anyone paying attention knows this exit wasn't planned. It was inevitable. So what really brought down Harley's most controversial CEO of all time? And can the company survive what's coming next? And how did we get here? What's happened? In 2021, Zeitz introduced the Hardwire, a bold 5-year plan meant to reshape Harley Davidson from the ground up. It was marketed as focused, disciplined, and rooted in returning to the brand's core strengths. That meant fewer models, tighter production, and an emphasis on what Zeitz called Grand American Touring: cruisers, trikes, and heavyweight bikes. No more moonshots, no more distractions, just big bikes for loyal riders sold at premium prices. At first, the markets applauded. Wall Street liked the sound of build less, charge more. Investors saw a man making cuts, tightening focus, and squeezing profit from tradition. Share prices climbed. Analysts nodded in approval, and for a brief period it looked like Harley Davidson had found its rhythm again. But what looked good on spreadsheets did not translate to showroom floors. Dealers began to suffer. Showroom diversity shrank. Product lines that once promised a new direction were quietly killed off. The Bronx, a street fighter aimed at urban riders, was shelved. The custom 1250 vanished before it could prove itself. Even the Pan America, Harley's foray into the adventure segment, was barely supported beyond its initial launch. The result, Harley became narrower, older, and far less relevant to younger riders. The bikes got more expensive, the brand got more insular, and the rider base, it began to evaporate. In trying to focus, Harley had boxed itself into a corner. Its once loyal dealers watched foot traffic decline and average buyer age rise. Entry-level options disappear, new riders looked elsewhere, and the company, once the standard bearer for rebellion, began to look like a gated community for aging enthusiasts. But here's the cruel irony. Before the Hardwire, there was another strategy, one that tried to do the opposite: open doors, not close them. And that plan, it may be the only one worth resurrecting: the ghost and future of more roads. Back in 2016, then CEO Matt Levatich introduced an initiative called More Roads to Harley Davidson. Its goal was ambitious, maybe even too ambitious: create more access points into the Harley ecosystem. That meant electric motorcycles, global expansion, small displacement bikes, and a new model blitz. 50 new motorcycles in 5 years, expanding to 100 over a decade. But the timing was brutal. The economy was slow. Interest rates were rising, and Harley was still struggling to define its identity. The More Roads initiative felt like it was running in 3 different directions at once. By 2020, Levatich was out, and Zeitz came in swinging the axe. He killed most of what More Roads stood for. Only a handful of experimental models made it to production, and many were quickly sidelined. The focus returned to big, expensive cruisers. Entry-level offerings and international strategies were shelved. It was a decisive move, but perhaps too severe. Now in 2025, the pendulum may be ready to swing back. The motorcycle market has changed again. The appetite for diversity is real. Brands like Honda, Royal Enfield, and even Chinese manufacturers are flooding the streets with bikes under $10,000. Young riders, many in their 20s and 30s, are more interested in modularity, urban mobility, and affordability than tradition chrome or engine rumble. And Harley, it's got one foot stuck in the past. Reviving a toned-down version of More Roads could be the strategic reset Harley desperately needs. Not the 100-bike fantasy, but a recalibrated effort to reach more riders, more markets, with more accessibility. But bringing it back would mean confronting everything Zeitz stood for, and his executions didn't just miss the mark, it ignited a backlash. We did the research so you didn't have to. If that felt like a fair deal, subscribing wouldn't hurt. The LiveWire Debacle. In 2019, Harley Davidson unveiled its first fully electric motorcycle, the LiveWire. It was sleek, fast, and undeniably ambitious. It was also a marketing and financial catastrophe. With a base price of nearly $30,000 United States dollars, the LiveWire was launched into a market that didn't exist, at least not in the way Harley imagined it. The very riders who might have embraced an electric Harley, young, urban, eco-conscious, were also the ones least likely to drop luxury car money on a motorcycle. Meanwhile, Harley's core base wanted nothing to do with a bike that didn't rumble. The LiveWire didn't just fail to bridge the gap, it widened the gulf. For Millennials and Generation Z, Harley's electric push felt out of touch. The product didn't align with their budgets, lifestyles, or expectations. The marketing focused more on engineering specs than emotional resonance. In an era when brands like Zero Motorcycles were offering EVs at half the price, Harley's offer felt not only expensive, but tone-deaf. The response was brutal. Sales were anemic. Dealers were left with unsold inventory. Critics hammered the decision to push a premium EV before building broader product appeal. In response, Harley spun off LiveWire as a separate brand, effectively trying to distance itself from its own failed reinvention. But the damage had already been done. The LiveWire didn't just hurt Harley's finances, it shook the company's already fragile cultural foundation. Riders didn't just dislike the bike, they began to question whether Harley Davidson knew who it was anymore. And while the LiveWire drew most of the headlines, it was the silence behind the scenes, the projects that never launched, that revealed an even deeper rot, the innovation vacuum. While the world debated the LiveWire, something quieter and arguably more dangerous was happening inside Harley Davidson's engineering pipeline. Projects were being shelved. Ambitious plans like the Bronx Street Fighter, the Custom 1250, and other next-gen gas-powered models were canceled or indefinitely delayed. Zeitz's hardwire strategy focused on building less, charging more, but it came at the cost of innovation. Harley's future was being sacrificed for short-term financial optics. These weren't just scrapped bikes, they were potential lifelines. The Bronx could have brought younger riders into the brand. The Custom 1250 had the bones of a modern muscle icon. Instead, Harley stuck to what it knew: touring, Softail, and trike platforms with minor updates and sky-high price tags. The fallout was felt across the dealer network. Retailers who had been promised a fresh product lineup now faced shrinking showroom diversity. Conversations with curious younger customers turned awkward when there was little to offer under $20,000. Dealers became frustrated. Many voiced concerns privately, but few dared challenge corporate directly. Meanwhile, competitors were flooding the market. Honda, Yamaha, Royal Enfield, and even smaller brands like CF Moto were releasing stylish, capable, and affordable machines that undercut Harley on price and outperformed them in value. Riders who might have considered a Harley simply walked away, often toward a competitor that still believed in the innovation. But the breakdown wasn't just mechanical or financial. But while Harley was busy slashing projects and playing it safe, the rest of the motorcycle world didn't slow down. In fact, they sped up, and they came for Harley's most vulnerable riders. The rise of the underdogs. Who's winning Harley's lost riders? When Harley Davidson narrowed its focus and priced out younger riders, it didn't just create a gap, it created an opportunity. And that opportunity wasn't wasted. Across the globe, motorcycle brands, many of them once dismissed as niche or budget-tier, are now thriving by giving Harley's lost audience exactly what they want. Start with Royal Enfield. Once seen as an old-school curiosity from India, the company has transformed itself into a global giant. Bikes like the Meteor, Classic 350, and the new Shotgun 650 offer retro charm, modern tech, and real-world usability, all for under $7,000. They've taken the old Harley blueprint, affordable, cool, simple, and actually executed on it. Then there's Honda. The Rebel 300 and 1100 series have done what Harley couldn't: offer modern cruisers that feel fun, responsive, and customizable at every level. Add in Honda's growing dominance in the lightweight adventure space with the CRF Rally and NX lineup, and it's clear they're picking up new riders while Harley's stuck chasing nostalgia. Now enter the Chinese invasion. CF Moto, Benelli, and other rising players are filling showrooms with sharp-looking, tech-loaded bikes priced well under Harley's entire entry point. They're not perfect, but to a 25-year-old buying their first ride, a $7,000 scrambler with ABS and LED lighting is a whole lot more attractive than a $30,000 touring beast. It's not just about price, it's about presence. These brands are active on social media, YouTube, and TikTok. They're plugged into urban culture, modular design, and digital native aesthetics. While Harley pushes glossy brochures and chrome-draped promo shots, the underdogs are filming city rides, DIY builds, and backroad stories that speak to a new kind of rider: The result, Harley's competition isn't just catching up, they're passing by, and they're doing it by embracing everything Harley chose to ignore. But this wasn't just a market shift. It was a cultural one, because while new brands won over a younger generation, Harley was busy alienating the very people who once defined its soul. Culture clash at the core. There's a reason Harley Davidson isn't just called a motorcycle brand, it's called a lifestyle. For decades, the name represented rebellion, loyalty, Americana, and identity. But under Jochen Zeitz, that emotional resonance began to erode. His approach wasn't inherently wrong, it was structured, investor-focused, and tailored for measurable success. But it clashed headfirst with what made Harley special in the first place. Inside the company, factions began to form. On one side were the corporate strategists, pushing for cost control, international growth, and electrification. On the other were longtime employees, dealers, and loyalists who felt the company was losing its soul. That tension seeped into every part of the business. The generational divide became especially pronounced. Baby boomers, the core of Harley's long-term success, felt alienated by the sudden shifts. Younger riders, instead of being inspired by a bold new Harley, were turned off by its pricing and confused messaging. Gen Z in particular saw the brand as outdated and overpriced, and efforts to modernize it felt disingenuous. Even Harley's dealer network, once a crown jewel of the brand, became a battleground. Many resented the shift toward electric and high-cost luxury models. Others struggled to sell bikes without a full range of entry-level options. The alignment between headquarters and the street broke down. Zeitz may have earned boardroom applause, but on the ground he was losing the war for Harley's identity. By trying to turn the brand into a lean, global-facing machine, he stripped away the rugged, unapologetic personality that had drawn millions of riders to it in the first place. And now, with Zeitz stepping down, Harley Davidson faces its most pivotal question yet. Who leads next? And will they rebuild what was lost or bury it for good? Searching for Harley's savior. As of the first quarter of the year 2025, Harley Davidson is officially on the hunt for a new chief executive officer. But this isn't just a routine leadership transition, it's a moment of reckoning. The board isn't simply hiring a replacement, they're casting the lead for a new act in Harley's century-long drama. And the stakes, they couldn't be higher. The outgoing CEO, Jochen Zeitz, may have initiated the transition under the guise of retirement, but anyone paying attention knows better. With investor confidence shaken, sales in a nosedive, and an entire generation of riders churning away from the brand, this move is less about legacy and more about survival. The search for his successor is already underway, with the board emphasizing that it will take until at least the end of the second quarter to finalize an appointment. But this time, they can't afford to get it wrong. What Harley Davidson needs now is not just a corporate manager, it needs a visionary, someone who understands the DNA of the brand, but also has the courage to rewrite the blueprint. Authenticity will be key. A slick, tech-driven outsider with no connection to the culture won't inspire confidence. Yet, neither will an old-school loyalist intent on reliving Harley's past glories. The next leader must walk a fine line between heritage and reinvention, honoring the past without being imprisoned by it. And that's no easy task, because today's Harley customer base is a fragmented mix. Aging baby boomers who cling to the myth of chrome and freedom, Gen X riders who crave customization and power, and younger generations who are more likely to ride electric scooters than a $40,000 touring bike. The board is looking for someone who can connect these dots, who can modernize without alienating, who can disrupt without destroying. The pressure to act quickly is intense. Shareholders want results. Dealers want direction, and riders, they just want to be heard. Whoever steps into this role will be forced to prove themselves almost immediately. But if the board plays it safe, choosing comfort over courage, they might doom the brand to irrelevance. But even with the right leader, there's a bigger question looming. Will Harley actually let them take risks? The return of risk. Will Harley dare again? Harley Davidson is standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind it is the comfort of familiarity. Big cruisers, loud pipes, and a marketing playbook built on nostalgia. Ahead is the uncertain terrain of transformation. Smaller bikes, global outreach, digital-first engagement, and electrification. The new CEO will be handed a legacy, yes, but also a dilemma. Will they protect what Harley has been, or will they dare to imagine what it could be? The scars of past risks are still fresh. When Harley launched the LiveWire, its first electric motorcycle, it did so with bold ambition but disastrous execution. Priced at nearly 30,000 United States dollars, LiveWire was meant to usher in a new era. Instead, it alienated core riders and failed to win over the environmentally conscious Gen Z audience. It became a cautionary tale inside the company, a reminder that innovation without market fit can be deadly. Since then, Harley has grown timid. Projects like the Bronx Street Fighter and the Custom 1250 were shelved. Pan America, the company's venture into adventure touring, launched to strong reviews but received little support afterward. Internally, decision-makers became risk-averse, preferring minor tweaks to bold moves. As a result, Harley stagnated creatively, culturally, and financially. And yet, avoiding risk is no longer an option. The market is changing too fast. Riders are evolving. Rivals like Royal Enfield, Honda, and Yamaha are capturing younger and more price-sensitive segments with lightweight, feature-rich motorcycles that cost a fraction of Harley's lineup. If the new CEO comes in with a mandate to preserve rather than innovate, they'll be steering the brand straight into a wall. But will they be allowed to take risks? Corporate boards often say they want bold thinking, but in practice they fear disruption. For Harley to truly evolve, the leadership must have room to experiment, fail, and try again. That means reintroducing mid-range bikes. That means cutting through dealership resistance. And it might even mean abandoning sacred cows like the Milwaukee 8 engine in favor of the Revolution Max or future-forward platforms. Because in a collapsing market, playing it safe is the riskiest move of all. But while the leadership rethinks the future, a fire is already burning. One led by the fallout from decisions Harley made to cut costs overseas. The Thailand Fallout. After closing U.S. plants, Harley fled to Thailand. Now the backlash is coming. In early 2024, Harley Davidson finalized a quiet but seismic shift. Faced with rising labor costs, the company moved a significant portion of production for the Revolution Max line to Thailand. On paper, it was a cost-cutting measure. In reality, it was a spark to a powder keg. Just months earlier, Harley had finalized a major labor contract with domestic workers, one that increased wages by nearly 40%. Workers celebrated what they believed was a renewed commitment to American manufacturing. But that celebration didn't last long. When Harley shuttered the very plants that built those bikes and shifted operations abroad, many viewed it as betrayal. The labor deal had barely dried when the machines were already shipping overseas. It wasn't just about jobs, it was about symbolism. Harley Davidson has long wrapped itself in the American flag, selling a vision of freedom, patriotism, and made in the USA pride. The move to Thailand pulled the curtain back on that image. Now critics say Harley talks red, white, and blue, but builds in black and white spreadsheets. And the timing couldn't be worse. With political winds shifting and the possibility of Donald Trump returning to office, trade tensions are rising again. If Trump reinstates harsh tariffs, especially on foreign-made motorcycles, Harley could find itself caught in the crossfire. A production shift that once looked smart on paper could soon become a financial disaster. But even if Harley had kept those jobs in the United States, it wouldn't have solved their biggest problem, because the true threat to Harley's future is Harley's own past. The used market that's killing new sales. Walk into any Harley Davidson dealership today, and chances are you'll hear the same question from would-be buyers. Why would I pay $30,000 for a new one when I can get a mint-condition used one for half that? And the scary truth for Harley is, they're right. The used Harley market has exploded. Thousands of nearly new cruisers, touring bikes, and Softails, barely ridden, lovingly maintained, and garage-kept, are flooding sites like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and CycleTrader, and they're selling fast. The reason? Boomers are aging out of riding. One by one, the generation that once fueled Harley's golden era is retiring, not just from work, but from two wheels. Some are downsizing. Others are selling off their extra bikes, and what's left behind is a tidal wave of well-kept inventory with barely any miles and no monthly payments. Harley's own success turned against itself. These bikes were built to last, but now their durability is eroding new sales. Why would a 30-something buyer spend top dollar on a new Road Glide when they can pick up a 2017 model with only 5,000 miles for under 15 grand? And dealers, they can't compete. Factory showrooms are filled with high-priced, minimally updated models that sit unsold while private sellers undercut them by thousands. Harley's pricing strategy made sense on Wall Street, but in the real world, it's losing to its own history. This isn't just a supply chain issue. It's an identity issue, because when your best bikes are still running strong a decade later, your worst enemy becomes yesterday's inventory. But the crisis isn't just mechanical or financial, it's emotional, because Harley didn't just lose customers, it lost its connection to the culture that built it. Why the dealers matter more than ever. Harley Davidson's dealer network was once its greatest strength, a network of community hubs, rider hangouts, and trusted local institutions. But today, those same dealerships have become one of Harley's biggest obstacles. The problem isn't just the bikes, it's how they're being sold, who they're being sold to, and the sales culture that refuses to evolve. Walk into many Harley dealerships today and the experience feels like stepping back in time. Sales reps still pitch chrome, leather, and lifestyle to a shrinking demographic. There is little focus on accessibility, affordability, or rider-first customization. If you ask about a lower-priced bike, you might get steered toward financing a full-size touring model. If you inquire about a smaller or entry-level bike, you might get dismissive looks. Or worse, silence. This resistance to change is costing Harley riders in revenue. Younger buyers expect transparency, modern digital shopping tools, and customization. They want honest pricing, modular options, and showroom environments that feel like tech stores, not shrines to nostalgia. Instead, they're met with a system designed to upsell and intimidate. It's no wonder so many walk out and never return. To fix this, Harley must radically retrain its dealer base or rebuild it. Sales culture must shift from gatekeeping to guiding. Reps must stop trying to convert customers into big bike loyalists and start meeting them where they are. That includes highlighting mid-size options, championing modern tech, and being excited, not resistant, about the new models that break from tradition. Because at the end of the day, a new Harley won't save the company if no one is selling it the right way. And even if Harley gets its dealerships aligned, another challenge looms, one with even higher stakes: investors, millennials, and the waiting game. The tension between Harley's financial goals and its cultural revival is now at a breaking point. Investors want short-term performance. They want revenue, returns, and rising stock prices. But riders, especially younger ones, are looking for long-term commitment to innovation, accessibility, and community. And Harley's new CEO, whoever that may be, will be trapped in the middle. The hardwire strategy that Jochen Zeitz implemented was loved by Wall Street at first. Building fewer bikes, selling them at premium prices, and reducing model variety seemed like a win. It worked for about 2 years. But by year 3, sales began to slip. By year 4, dealerships were closing. By year 5, Zeitz was out. Now investors want results again, and fast. But rebuilding trust with riders won't happen in a single quarter. It won't come from cutting another model or chasing electric trends without real demand. It requires patience. It requires a vision that spans 5 to 10 years. And it requires convincing shareholders that long-term relevance is worth more than short-term spikes. That's a difficult sell when Harley's aging customer base is shrinking, and its brand has yet to land with millennials or Gen Z in a meaningful way. There is still a gap between what the brand thinks it is and what today's market needs it to be. And bridging that gap will take more than investor calls. It will take courage. Because if Harley chooses Wall Street again over the riding community, the results may be irreversible. Which brings us to the final and most uncomfortable question of all. Is this Harley's last chance? Harley Davidson is standing at a crossroads it has visited before, but never with stakes this high. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, tariffs and patriotism bailed the company out. In the 2010s, nostalgia carried it. But in the 2020s, there is no cavalry, there is no cushion, just consequence. Zeitz's exit marks more than the end of a leadership era. It marks the end of Harley's ability to stall, delay, or half-commit. What comes next must be decisive and different, because every core pillar of the company is under strain. The dealers are disillusioned, the riders are aging out, the brand feels stuck in a time war, and younger audiences, even when they're intrigued, are priced out or turned off by the outdated vibe. So what does Harley Davidson want to be? A luxury nostalgia machine for boomers, a rebellious symbol for middle-aged patriots, or a truly modern global motorcycle company that makes high-quality, accessible bikes for a new generation? It cannot be all three. It must choose. But now it's your turn. What should Harley do from here? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives like this one, hit subscribe. We're just getting started.